The original Xbox was a pretty cool piece of hardware, and the only 6th generation console that could render games in high definition. The PlayStation 2 had a couple of games that used upscaling to simulate high def, but they weren't really HD. There are around 40 Xbox games that support at least 720p, so let's take a look at the 5 I happen to own. Amped Freestyle Snowboarding was a launch title for the Xbox, and Amped 2 followed a couple years later in 2003. The game was a departure from the extreme sports genre that was all the rage at the time, and instead delivers a more simulation-like experience. The Amped games were never my favorite, and Cool Borders 2 will probably always be my favorite snowboarding game, but this one is no slouch. What Amped 2 does well is give you the feeling of being on a real ski resort. The mountain slopes are huge, and the rails and ramps are laid out in such a way that no two runs will ever be the same. Controlling your boarder feels crisp and responsive and gives a nice sensation of actually being on snow. The trick system works well enough, making use of the right analog stick to perform different moves. Amped 2 features an in-depth career mode, requiring you to perform tricks in front of photographers and build up your reputation, but if I'm honest, this is a game I'll never put any serious time into. The 720p graphics look pretty great, and the draw distance is actually kind of amazing. The player models and trees all look terrific, as do the lighting effects and shadows. You won't likely mistake this for an Xbox 360 game, but all things aside, Amped 2 looks pretty awesome in HD. Crash Nitro Kart is a game I've reviewed in depth a few months ago, but it's worth looking at again. This was the second racing game set in the Crash Bandicoot universe, and is obviously a kart racing game. Crash Nitro Kart is usually well received, and many gamers really enjoy this one. I find it a bit more average than great, and think age has caught up with it. My biggest issue is with the boosting. You can use either of the shoulder triggers to initiate a drift. A gauge will then appear on the left or right side of the screen. Once the gauge turns red, but before it expires, you must then press the other trigger button to get a boost. You can do this up to 3 times in a row to keep your boost going, but I find the entire setup incredibly unintuitive. Boosting aside, there is a lot to like in Crash Nitro Kart. The racing action is pretty good, and the track layouts are well above average. They fit the game's mechanics perfectly, rewarding you for drifting through turns with nice straight sections for speed. There is definitely some fun to be had here. The high-definition graphics look pretty damn good as well. This is definitely the definitive version of Crash Nitro Kart.
To Mason.
ESPN NBA Basketball 2K4 is a game I would certainly never review. Mainstream sports simulations are simply not my thing. I actually bought this ages ago, only because it was a high-def game. As the game is worthless, I've never sold it. I couldn't tell you if this game is good, if it's aged well, or anything like that. I would guess the presentation is wrong, as modern titles present the action from the side, like a real broadcast. NBA 2K4 still presents the action from behind. So I'm going to look at this from a purely aesthetic point of view. NBA 2K4 looks okay, but you aren't going to confuse this for a real-life game of basketball. When the camera is zoomed out, everything looks surprisingly good, but anytime the camera zooms in, the game quickly shows its age. The textures look nice, but the player models and faces just don't cut it anymore. NBA 2K1 on the Dreamcast had a 2-on-2 street mode, complete with real street courts that I rather enjoyed. But that is missing in 2K4, so other than being in 720p, there is nothing remarkable here.
The Spurs take it up.
MX vs. ATV Unleashed was a late Xbox title, released in the spring of 2005. This is a game I've poured dozens of hours into over the years and rather enjoy. There is a lengthy career mode, and as the title suggests, the game focuses around dirt bikes and quads, but there are other vehicles you can unlock as well. It seems my game save has disappeared, so I can't show you everything, but the sand rail gives a good example of what the game has to offer. The controls in MX vs ATV Unleashed are amazing, and when I play retro games of this genre, this is the bar as to which they are judged. The steering, leaning, and suspension all feel terrific, and the way the tires interact with the dirt surface feels very realistic. It's a seriously fun game and easy to recommend. The 720p graphics look amazing. The vehicle models in particular are detailed and razor sharp and definitely benefit from the increased resolution. It's amazing to look at this and think it was developed on hardware released in 2001. If you enjoy racing games, definitely give MX vs ATV Unleashed a try.
Said your prayers.
Battle 1. Fight!
Last but certainly not least is Soul Calibur 2. This was an interesting title, as each platform the game was released on had an exclusive character. The Xbox version features the comic book anti-hero Spawn. Fighting games are not my area of expertise, as you can probably tell from this footage. But despite this, there are a few titles I do enjoy, and Soul Calibur 2 is definitely one of them. The controls are incredibly fluid, and it's really easy for a novice to jump right in and not feel overwhelmed. The presentation is excellent, with a huge variety of environments to fight in, a nice character roster, great soundtrack, and voice acting. While Soul Calibur 2 does run in 720p, it's not rendered in widescreen. It's pillar boxed, meaning there are black bars on the sides of the screen. I assume this was done to keep the frame rate at a solid 60 frames per second. The game is simply gorgeous, with high-resolution textures, awesome character models, and incredibly fluid animation. The detail is further enhanced with the increased resolution, making the Xbox release the definitive version of Soul Calibur 2. This game is also dirt cheap, going for under $5, including shipping, on eBay. Soul Calibur 2 is a must-own for the Xbox. And there you have it, 5 original Xbox games that all support true high definition, before the arrival of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. While they won't all go on to be classics, you should definitely snatch up Soul Calibur 2.